Good afternoon. So I'm Mr. Cambre, I'm the Director of Moral and Ethical Education. I'm excited to be here today. I want to talk about your breath. Now, breath is an interesting concept, and maybe you had a couple of things pop into your head when I said your breath, but let's start with something that's comfortable. So we'll talk about what you may have studied in science. All right, let's all take a deep breath. We're going to breathe in through the nose for 3. We're going to hold our breath for a minute or a second or so, and then we're going to exhale through our mouth. So we know what's happened just now, right? So we inhaled some oxygen, we've exhaled some carbon dioxide, we've oxygenated some blood, and that oxygen has gone to our organs and it's fueled them, so we are actually alive. It's pretty good, right? But there's also a use for breath when it comes to your mental health. I might be a little bit nervous right now. You might be feeling like your mind is racing at times. And one of the best things you can do is to stop and take a breath. How about we try it again, thinking about our mental state right now. So how about we close our eyes, we'll breathe in for 3, hold, and exhale for 3. Good. So maybe our mental state has just improved a little bit. It's kind of interesting about what the breath does to us in terms of our body and in terms of our mind. Now, we know a lot about, breath and what it does in terms of the physical sense because of our progress with science, but it wasn't always that case, right? A long time ago, before we knew how breathing worked, we had different languages. One of those languages was Aramaic. Another one was an old form of Hebrew. And it's interesting to think that the same word for breath in these old languages was used to describe what we call today as spirit. So in Aramaic, the word for spirit and breath were the same. And when you think about that, and how breath affects the body, and how the breath affects the mind, but we can also replace the word breath with spirit, we start to think about some, let's say more abstract things. Okay, now maybe I need to slow down for a second. When I talk about science, it's very comfortable. It's very measurable. We understand it, we experiment, we can understand, we come up with ideas. Concrete, absolute, and it makes us feel safe and secure. We're in control. When we start to think about more abstract ideas, we start to lose that rock stable ground. It becomes a little more unsure. So let's go back to something a little more comfortable. Let's talk about math and science. Well, when we started out studying math and science, it was pretty simple concepts, counting, addition, multiplication, and then things start getting a little more complicated to the realm where we get a little more abstract, right? So some of you that are taking, let's say, senior level mathematics, we're starting to understand things like irrational numbers, right? Like the square root of 2, where we're moving away from the rational, we're going towards irrational. Or even further, we're going to the imaginary, right? The iota is an imaginary number, right? The square root of -1. What is the point? Why are we moving away from, let's say, the comfortable stuff that we know to stuff that is not even real? Well, I can go so far as to question, is math real? Weird question, isn't it? Well, Dr. Huja loves to say everything is physics, right? But numbers don't have any physical properties, do they? Right? A weird thing to think about, what is the mass of a 5? What is the height of a 7? In fact, I would say that none of you I would say that no one has actually ever seen a number. You've seen pixels on a computer, you've seen graphite or ink on a piece of paper, but does the number 2 exist? Did we create it? Before humanity, was there math? Were there numbers? Well, maybe some people like, of course, math wasn't a creation, it is, right? And so if I take something comfortable, like math and science, and extend that to some more abstract idea when it comes to breath, we can talk about the spirit. Something that we can't find in a cadaver, but we can say it's there with the same level of security and comfort that we can say that imaginary numbers work to explain things like electricity and radar, right? So if we go into that more interesting, let's say, moving beyond the physical, scientific, to the metaphysical, which is, of course, a branch of philosophy, let's start to think about our spirit. Let's think about our breath. So, we ask ourselves, okay, we can be healthy in body. We can be healthy in mind. How are we healthy in spirit? And we come to morality and ethics. The school is putting a lot of emphasis on this. It's important, and it's so important that actually, I believe, one of Applebee's curriculum principles, and of course you all know what curriculum means, right? It's part of your course content, it's core. A curriculum principle of Applebee is spiritual and moral development in all subjects. So how do we do this? How do we do this? Well, Applebee's come up with something that I'm hoping is quite familiar to you. Respect. In all our words and actions, we demonstrate for ourselves and one another, acting with courtesy and consideration towards all. Responsibility. We take responsibility for our actions without excuses and hold both ourselves and others accountable to the highest ethical standards. Integrity. In pursuing the highest standards of excellence, and in all our words and actions, acting towards others at all times with honor and integrity. Compassion. We actively recognize the needs of others within our Applebee College community and beyond. These are core ethical values. These values are good for your spirit. They're good for your breath. All right, one other thing that I want you to think about when it comes to breath is that it's noticeable, right? You notice when someone has bad breath. You notice when someone is wearing the uniform properly. I bet they have good breath, nice and minty fresh. Maybe you notice that someone cut in front of you in line today at lunch. Maybe you noticed an odor as they did that. So, my message to you today is to think about your spirit. Think about your breath. Take care of your breath. And you do that not just by being well. You do it by being good. Be good to yourself. Be good to others. By doing so, there's a pretty good chance that you'll be healthy in body, in mind, and in spirit. Before I close, I'd like you to take out your hymn books. And look at number 656. Now, you may remember that I just said a few moments ago, the word breath and the word spirit, a long time ago, in biblical times, let's say, they were interchangeable. Look at verse 3. To a gentle girl in Galilee, a gentle breeze she came, a whisper softly calling in the dark. Who is she? Who is coming sailing on the wind? I think if you were to ask churchgoers, they would say, the Spirit. You can look at these hymns that we sing, and you'll find in other verses, like in 656, that the words spirit and breath are used interchangeably. So with some spirit and with some breath, I invite you to sing number 656.